What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another week of your fantasy football stardom and situm. We are now here in week 15. That means it's the fantasy football semifinals. That means we are 1 week away to getting to that fantasy championship game where we can grab that strap. And we are going to do so, if you listen to my fantasy starts and sits this week. These are my favorite starts and my least favorite plays, my sits for week number 15 of the 2020 fantasy season. Before I give you my starts and sits at the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and defensive positions, make sure you do spike that like button and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for more fantasy football starts and sits. Comment your questions, your fantasy lineup questions, your fantasy starts and sits in the comment section below. It's rewarding for me to be able to not just play fantasy, have fun doing so, and winning my own championships, but to help you guys take home your fantasy championship. That's almost more exciting and more rewarding for me, is to be able to help you guys achieve that success in fantasy. So let's do that. Comment below your questions that you have, whatever it may be, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Don't forget that I also do a Q&A on Saturday, the night before the games take place on Sunday. We might actually move that to tomorrow because there are two games, or maybe in the morning of Saturday. But you'll just have to stay tuned to the Bottom Line View to find out when I'm going live for the Q&A. But that's a good place to also ask me any questions that you have. Now, without further ado, let's get into those starts and sits for the week, starting off with the quarterback position. Quarterback is very important in the fantasy playoffs because you want to make sure that you have a guy that has a ceiling, but also will not absolutely blow a week for you and just lose the game in itself. That is just, I've been there. You don't want to start somebody that is kind of risky. So these are guys that I feel have good ceilings, but also have very nice floors. Let's start off with Tom Brady. We know Tom Brady's clutch in the real life playoffs, but I believe he can be clutch for you this fantasy playoffs. He plays the Atlanta Falcons, who have been the worst defense versus opposing quarterbacks all year for fantasy purposes. And Tom Brady now, without Ronald Jones in the lineup for Tampa Bay this weekend, is going to be the centerpiece of their offensive approach. I believe they'll be passing the ball more with Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Scotty Miller, Rob Gronkowski. They have mismatches across the Atlanta secondary that, just like Minnesota, is not very good. They have maybe a slightly better pass rush than Minnesota, but Brady should be able to feast here for multiple touchdowns. His floor is very high because they should win this game quite easily, and his ceiling is extremely high to the point where he could throw 4-ish touchdowns in this game. Phillip Rivers versus the Houston Texans is another one of my favorite starts for week 15. Phillip Rivers has been really good recently. I don't know if you've been watching or keeping track of the stat lines of Mr. Philly Rivers, but Rivers has been consistent and reliable for your fantasy lineups, and now he plays a juicy matchup versus the Houston Texans, who he was just very good against just a couple weeks ago. But now Houston is even more deprived of talent in the secondary. They lost Justin Reed this week. They already lost Bradley Roby. Those are two of their more talented secondary players. They're gone. They're out. The Texans' pass rush, as it is J.J. Watt and not a lot else. Rivers should have a ton of success. I expect another 300-yard passing game and multiple touchdowns from Phillip Rivers, who I've said all year is a startable quarterback when he plays a bad defense, and the Texans are certainly a bad defense. Derek Carr versus the Chargers on Thursday Night Football is one of my favorite starts this week. The Chargers defense is kind of overrated. It's not what we expected it to be. And really, besides their pass rush with Joey Bosa and sometimes Melvin Ingram when he plays, they're not great. The secondary is overrated. They've gotten rid of multiple players or they're hurt, and people still think they're there for some reason. But the thing with Carr here is that the Raiders have a good offensive line. They'll be able to control the atmosphere around Derek Carr. John Gruden, a mismatch versus Anthony Lynn from a coaching perspective. he'll be able to piece together a nice game plan. I expect this game that has a high over-under, a high total, I believe that the Raiders will score high 20s, low 30s, meaning Derek Carr will have a very successful, efficient game in this one. And I believe that Derek Carr will be one of the more reliable, safe quarterbacks that you can play in Week 15. So if you're a guy that doesn't really have a quarterback that you've been riding with all year, and you're in need of a guy that's safe, reliable, Derek Carr is your man. The defense that he's playing is not very good. It's a bottom 10 defense for fantasy versus quarterbacks, and he'll definitely be solid for you. Big Ben versus Cincinnati. Big Ben is in what I call, and what most people call, a bounce back spot here. Big Ben, I understand, hasn't been as sharp lately, and the offense has struggled, and you've seen it on primetime television that the Steelers' offense has been struggling, but they now play Cincinnati. The Bengals, their defensive line is without any good players. They're rather hurt. They've been traded. The Bengals' pass rush is the worst in the league at this moment. And Big Ben will have all the time in the world to sit back there, throw his multiple pump fakes that he loves to do, run around the pocket, hit Juju, hit Johnson, hit Claypool, and I feel Big Ben is going to have a massive bounce-back performance on Monday Night Football and shut up all the doubters and Steeler haters. Big Ben will have a massive game versus the Bengals, a team that he typically owns. My quarterback sits Matt Ryan versus the Bucs. The Bucs are a good defense, but here's the thing with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan has been so inconsistent and so unreliable. Why would you rely on him in the fantasy playoffs this year? It's just not a good look. Matt Ryan without Julio has been a different quarterback. He has not performed well, played well. He is not being protected up front, and Tampa Bay has a vicious pass rush that is definitely one that you want to avoid this week. Matt Ryan could have a disastrous game that definitely hurts your fantasy team. So I would just straight up cut Matt Ryan, find somebody else to play. If Derek Carr is out there, if Phillip Rivers is out there, if Big Ben is out there, all of those guys I would prefer over Matt Ryan. Don't start Matt Ryan because of his name. Sit Matt Ryan because of his recent performance. It's not worthy of starting him in the fantasy playoffs. Tua versus New England. I'm going to keep it plain and simple. Tua is a rookie quarterback. He's playing Bill Belichick. A Bill Belichick defense versus rookie quarterbacks is not good. I get it that Tua was great last week versus the Chiefs and actually performed well for your fantasy team. But he's now playing New England with a far better secondary, a far more complex scheme, and in a game that Tua is not going to have to throw the ball a lot to win this game. Miami is going to try to win a low-scoring affair versus the Patriots because they can. They don't have to be in shootout mode, and they'll keep the pressure off Tua. I would sit him in this game. Kirk Cousins versus Chicago. Chicago has owned Cousins throughout the course of his Minnesota career. Chicago, just like Tampa, which gave Cousins and the Vikings offense a lot of issues, has a very good front seven and a very good pass rush. Chicago with Khalil Mack, who took over the game last week versus Deshaun Watson and the Texans. If he can do that, man, versus Deshaun Watson, then he can do that versus a worse offensive line in Minnesota and Kirk Cousins. I'm fading Cousins in as many places as I possibly can. Baker Mayfield versus the Giants. I get it. You're on the hype train. You now all of a sudden are a Browns fan wearing your Baker jersey. But the Giants defense is underrated. It has been for basically the entire season. I get it that James Bradbury is out, so it's looking juicy. But the Giants are well schooled. They will not be attacked down the field in the passing game. This will be a game where the Browns can easily win by running the rock the way they want to. They're not going to have to be forced into a pass-heavy game script the way they were versus Baltimore. So fade Baker after a big performance on Monday Night Football. My running back starts this week. Taylor, the rookie. The man that you drafted in the second, third, or fourth round that you had such high expectations for, he's finally come around. And if you've made it to the playoffs with him on your roster, it is time to load him up and start him. He plays the Texans. The Texans defense is a disaster. It's been a disaster all year versus the run. I'm starting Rivers. I'm starting Taylor. I'm starting as many Colts as I can because they're going to score 30 in this game, and Taylor's going to get at least one of those tutties. Dobbins versus Jacksonville. I'm starting Dobbins. I might even start Gus the Bus this week if I need a running back because Jacksonville can't defend the run. Baltimore's on a hot streak. They are in that mode of chip on my shoulder, and I'm starting any running back that is in a Lamar Jackson offense right now because Lamar is feeling it, and so is J.K. Dobbins. Jacksonville will not be able to keep up in this game. Run the rock, Baltimore. Run the rock. Raheem Mostert versus Dallas. Dallas can't defend the run. I don't know if you've watched all year long, but Dallas can't defend the run. And Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, whoever the 49er running back is in this game, bro, I am starting them because Dallas can't set the edge to save their lives. And what does Kyle Shanahan love to do? Stretch left, stretch right, outside zone left, outside zone right. The Niners might run for 300 yards in this game. I'm starting whatever Niners running back that I have this week. We have Mr. Mike Davis versus Green Bay. Now, Christian McCaffrey officially out this week. The Packers are not good versus the run. The only chance the Panthers have in this game is by really running the rock and controlling the clock and keeping Rodgers off the field, meaning Davis will be a big part of that game plan. I'm starting him every chance I get. My running back sits this week, Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus New Orleans. The Saints are a top 3 run defense this year. Don't pay no mind to Miles Sanders having an 80-plus yard touchdown. Those are fluky. Edwards-Helaire is not the breakaway runner that Sanders is. And the Chiefs struggle to run the ball versus any defense. I don't expect that to be the case in New Orleans. I don't even expect Kansas City to really run the ball in general. So I'm sitting all of their running backs this week. Giovanni Bernard versus Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a top 3 run defense. Pittsburgh has struggled more versus the run, but Gio has not been successful. The run game in Cincy is just terrible. They don't have a quarterback to threaten the pass. They don't have an offensive line to open up holes. Bernard is a guy that has no high ceiling and barely a floor. I'm just sitting him on my bench at this point. Todd Gurley versus Tampa Bay. Gurley, he's kind of been off my radar the last couple of weeks, because Atlanta's kind of been irrelevant right now. But the Bucs are the number 1 run defense in the league. I wouldn't get excited because Dalvin Cook actually found success versus them. It's not going to be Todd Gurley. Gurley is one of the worst running backs in the league right now. He has no explosive ability and will not break away from Levante David or Devin White. And this might come as a surprise, but Ezekiel Elliott versus San Francisco. The 49ers are one of the 10 best run defenses in the league. They're still very solid in that area. And Zeke is hurt right now. He's been limited or out at practice, missing time. He's been very inconsistent all year long. I expect Dallas to fall behind in this game because San Francisco's offense will find success through their rushing attack. Dallas will have to pass, which means Zeke is not going to be as involved as usual. So if you have other options, go with them over Zeke this week. My wide receiver starts Thursday night. Load up and start Nelson Aguilar. I am too. Okay, I get it. The name is scary, but look at the stats and look at the targets. He has been Derek Carr's guy when it comes to the red zone. He has been Derek Carr's guy, even with Henry Ruggs there as the downfield target. And now Ruggs is out, guys. The Chargers, overrated secondary. I'm telling you this. They are going to score 30-plus points. Aguilar is going to be involved heavily, especially early in the game. I would start him. If I need a receiver 3 with high upside, that's your guy right there. Brandon Ayuk versus Dallas. Ayuk has been special as a rookie, and I understand Kyle Shanahan said he's just getting started. He is just getting started. Now he plays a Dallas secondary that's very, very, very easy. And Brandon Ayuk is a special playmaker with the ball in his hands. With Debo all banged up, he becomes the primary focus of this passing game. He will get a ton of targets. You have to start him again. He's been so good, and he's been part of the reason you've gotten to where you are. T.Y. Hilton versus Houston. I don't know if you've heard the little fairy tale, the little storybook of T.Y. Hilton owning the Houston Texans, but that's basically been T.Y. Hilton throughout the course of his career. 200-yard game here, 200-yard game there. I don't expect 200 yards, but T.Y. has been a lot better lately. I don't know if it's health, if it's chemistry with his quarterback, but Hilton looks good, and I think he's going to have a big game versus the Texans this week. No corner can cover him on an island on the Texans. I am loading up T.Y. And Chris Godwin. I get it. Chris Godwin wasn't great last week, and you're probably mad at him because he didn't perform that well, but he can only perform so well when Brady doesn't really throw the ball a lot. This week, I expect him to, as I stated earlier, because no Ronald Jones means probably more passing for the Bucs. Chris Godwin is a really good slot receiver. Atlanta might be without their slot defender this week, and Chris Godwin is a guy that's going to be able to rack in 6 to 8 catches. He might not score a touchdown, but he's going to have 6 catches, 80 yards. He might get in the end zone. He's just very reliable. I would not be afraid of starting him this week. He will be reliable. Don't worry about last week. Wide receiver sits. DJ Chark versus Baltimore. He's going to go against Marlon Humphrey for a majority of the day, I do expect. Baltimore is very susceptible to the pass in other areas of their secondary, specifically with all the injuries they've had. And it's not going to be the focus of Jacksonville and Minshew to throw the ball at one of the best corners in the league. So Chark is a talented player, their best receiver, but they have other weapons they can go to in the passing game. I expect Chark to be faded in general from the Jacksonville game plan because of who he's playing. Devontae Parker is similar. Now, I don't know if he's going to play or not in this game, but even if he does, Parker's a guy that often is tough. He suits up, he tries to play, but he's often banged up. He's going to be playing Stephon Gilmore. Parker has had some success versus Gilmore in the past, but with the injury, with the matchup, and with Tua not really having to pass the ball a lot in this game, I just don't see any upside to this. So just sit Parker and don't worry about it. T. Higgins versus Pittsburgh. Higgins has been good for you. He's been a reason you're in the playoffs most likely. But he's playing Pittsburgh, who is just going to overwhelm the offensive line of Cincinnati, sack their quarterback multiple times, and it's just going to be absolutely ugly. So I would sit any Cincinnati receiver. That's Boyd, that's Higgins, that's anybody you have. Just don't wait till Monday. Pick somebody up, get Nelson Aguilar, start him in your lineup. Higgins, there's no upside to this play. I don't like it at all. Jamison Crowder versus the Rams. He had a great early season. I've been there. I traded for him. He didn't do anything late in the season. I've given up on him. I straight up cut him. Now he plays the Rams. He's most likely going to see Jalen Ramsey or one of their top corners, one of their top defenders. Crowder's just been super disappointing, even with Sam Darnold in there. So I'm fading Jamison Crowder versus probably the best defense in the league. The tight end starts this week. Hunter Henry on Thursday Night Football. Likely no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams. That means Hunter Henry will be the primary focus of the passing game. The Raiders are okay versus tight ends, but nothing special. Henry might score a touchdown. He might have 6 to 7 catches in this game. Might be more involved than typical. So Henry's definitely a start for me. Andrews versus the Jacksonville Jags. Andrews could score a touchdown in this game with no Marquise Brown. He's going to be the primary focus, just like Hunter Henry in LA. I expect this game, the Baltimore Ravens, to score 30, maybe 40 points versus Jacksonville. So Andrews had a couple big plays versus Cleveland, but expect him to get more targets and probably just more volume in general this week. And then you have Irv Smith. Smith was awesome versus the Bucs very quietly last week. Actually was even good the week previous. Kyle Rudolph is hurt. I don't expect him to play this week versus Chicago. And Chicago does have one weakness. That's actually defending tight ends. Smith could have a good game here. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a sneaky performance versus the Chicago Bears. If you're in need of a tight end, I would start him. My tight end sits Jonnu Smith. This is a guy that you might have, but you could pick up Irv Smith. I'm in the same situation in some of my leagues. Jonnu has stunk. He just doesn't get any targets. He's not involved, and I'm over it. I'm done with it. I'm moving on. So Irv Smith's the guy that I'm replacing Jonnu Smith with. Jonnu's actually playing a defense in Detroit that doesn't give up a lot to tight ends, and he hasn't been involved enough for me to reliably start him. Then you have Dalton Schultz versus San Francisco. San Francisco has their safeties intact. They have Fred Warner intact. They can defend tight ends fairly successfully. So the receivers are going to get more work in this game than Schultz. And then you have Zach Ertz versus Arizona. The guy stinks. He's not involved. Jalen Hurts doesn't have that connection with him like Wentz or Foles did. So I'm sitting Ertz. The guy to play is Dallas Goedert if you need to play a tight end in Philly. It's not Ertz any longer. And my defensive starts this week, the Rams versus the Jets. That's obvious. The Jets absolutely suck. They might be the worst team I've ever seen. Buffalo versus Denver. Saturday game. You could get a good start on your opponent by starting Buffalo's defense versus Drew Lock, who's always susceptible to throwing a couple picks, maybe even a pick six. San Francisco versus Dallas. Dallas just fumbles all over themselves, pukes all over themselves, whatever way you want to put it. I mean, Zeke fumbles all the time. Dalton makes dumb decisions. And San Francisco's defense is very good at taking the ball away. They played very well versus Washington if it weren't for their offense blowing that game. So there you go. My starts and sits for Week 15, the semifinals of Fantasy Football 2020. Let me know any questions you have in the comment section below. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Good luck and peace.